Hey, this is Home Game, and we just did our Waterdeep Dragon Heist wrap up. Now we're still kind of at the docks in Waterdeep, but we're getting ready to jump into Spelljammer. um, so I'd like to kind of talk about Waterdeep a bit. Um, One, Waterdeep can be super overwhelming. So there's so much history. It's Waterdeep is like the major city on the Sword Coast for Dungeons and Dragons. Um, and it's so big. There are 100,000 things you can do there on a daily basis. And the book they give you, or the book you buy with the adventure, is this big, right? So, and it's got a lot in it, but it also has 4 adventures in it, and you're supposed to pick one. 223 pages. So you're supposed to pick one of the 4 adventures to run your players through. And, well, let's just say I was both overwhelmed by the content and underwhelmed by the content. So what I would honestly prefer they do is just pick one and give me a 230 page book. But I see what they're trying to do, and it's not. It's just this is just obviously my personal feelings, but they were trying to give you a bunch of options, and the problem for me is my brain couldn't sort out all of those options. A lot of times, I feel like we had a lot of fun, but also it would have been great if the book were more focused. For example, so the book starts you out in a tavern, starts you out in the Yawning Portal, a hugely famous tavern, tons of history, run by a near immortal, God blessed, um, owner. And the book throws a battle in there that it doesn't believe the players would survive. So this thing crawls out of the well in uh, the center of the tavern, and it attacks, and all the patrons go running. So there's crowds of people they have to deal with. The giant thing that attacks is not supposed to be engaged by the players, but a bunch of sturges fly off its back. It flies up to the other levels of the tavern. It attacks patrons up there. You hear screaming, and Durnan, the bar owner, grabs his greatsword, hops over the bar. He engages this thing, and he yells at the players to go help kill the sturges on the other floors. The problem is you just threw a giant thing in front of the players, and they're the heroes of this story. So I spent 3 rounds trying to talk 2 of them out of engaging the thing that could kill them. um, and it also, this thing had nothing to do with the story. So aside from throwing this giant juggernaut tank thing at the players, it also didn't build on the story. So when I ran the Hell of a Summer event, and that involves the Castle Lanterns and a bunch of demonic stuff. So at that moment I tried infusing the demonic presence pretty early. So I threw like a half orc, chain devil monster essentially. So it's like this big hulking green half orc, and it was also had like some chain devil stuff going on. And when they killed it, it had like black ichor oozing from it, mixed in with its blood, like it was like half changed, half not. So they could start asking those questions right away, like, why is this happening in Waterdeep? but the book didn't make it any kind of demonic thing. It was just a monster that jumped out of the well because it was being attacked by sturges. The book couldn't have made it, or it could have, but if the book made it by default, a half demonic thing, it wouldn't necessarily fit the story that you were going to run, because this is part of the build up before you even branch off into the 4 separate stories. So I altered it from the beginning to try to tie it in. And if they would have just made it one story, that could have been more specific to the story from the beginning. Now, if they would have made it one story, maybe less people would have liked it, because they would have only had one story to choose from in order to run an adventure. So, like I said, I see why they did it. There's some pluses and minuses to both of the thought philosophies. And given it was like one of their, I think it was one of their first major adventure books they put out for 5e, if not the first, I can understand them kind of wanting to cover their bases with the first book. One of the problems is that there's not enough specific content. So there's a bunch of general stuff for you to build off of, which is good. But like I said, Waterdeep is full of things, and it doesn't begin to touch on all of those things. In fact, even the alleyway that you live in isn't fully described. And there's not a whole lot of guidance in there. There's like, I think it gives you a few NPCs and a few details, but so after I read through the book, it led me to reach out for third-party resources. Now, I could have definitely just made up a bunch of stuff. And well, aside from reaching out for third-party resources, I was also just researching Waterdeep online, trying to figure out what's happened in the past, which was super interesting for me. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it. So it's not like I'm not a complete loss. It was a great time digging into it and trying to figure stuff out. But so I started watching some other YouTubers who were, showing off things that they found, or just searching through Drivethrurpg to find stuff. And I ended up buying about around 13 additional things. So I bought a book called Treasures and Trinkets for DragonHeist. I bought a book. I'll just tell you the ones that I think that you should actually pick up. And I didn't look up the price for Treasures and Trinkets, but it's probably around $10, if that. I mean, all of these things can pretty much be found on Drivethrurpg. So Treasures and Trinkets, Waterdeep DragonHeist. It's a specific to Waterdeep DragonHeist. Though in Waterdeep you could probably find anything, because a huge city with tons of resources. Blue Alley, it's a magical alley inside of Waterdeep. I ended up swapping out one of, that's where they got part of the MacGuffin. And it was a good time. We enjoyed it. Waterdeep City Encounters, I believe I bought the digital and physical copy of that. It's not super big, but it has a lot of good stuff in it. The artwork, I think, is just kind of copied out of the Waterdeep book. So there's a bunch of artwork in there too, but it's nothing new, I don't think. But it has a bunch of random factions. It has random little adventure books and stuff. It talks about encounters with City Watch, and it's a good little supplement for DragonHeist. That was around $8. That's probably the most expensive thing I bought, and that's just for the PDF. I bought the physical and the PDF copy. Blue Alley was $5. It's good. It's a nice little module. I bought a book called Residents of Trollskull Alley, which is a highly detailed explanation of all the residents in Trollskull Alley, and I found myself continuously going back to that to try to pick little nuggets out for things like things the adventurer would see looking out their window at Trollskull Alley. What kinds of things would be going on? Waterdeep expanded factions. Chapter 2 of I think chapter 2 of DragonHeist is super open-ended. So it's literally like, here's chapter 2, your players do a bunch of stuff, and then this happens. But your players do a bunch of stuff thing that I just said is a bunch of stuff you have to make up, essentially. Like they give you options for things to do, but it's not real specific. And then a fireball happens, and then you go into chapter 3. So the expanded factions was really good for filling in some gaps. That's $5 on Drivethrurpg. Volo's Guide to Waterdeep, aside from just being an awesome little second edition book, it helped really, like if you had to come up with a name for a tavern, there's actually an entry in here about Blue Alley because I was trying to figure out where it was, and this is where I found out where it was. It has pricing and different kinds of taverns and stuff. It's got little, it shows intersections of the streets to help you find stuff, and these match up with the current map pretty well. It's got this nice black and white artwork going on. I bought this through Drivethrurpg. The physical copy, I'm not gonna lie, was a little pricey. I think it was it's probably not too bad, but I mean it's just glue bound, I believe. It's not a super impressive thing. The contents of it is very useful. The book itself, it's labeled as $10 US, but I think that's just the old sell price from the ADD price from back in the day. You can get this print on demand through Drivethrurpg. I paid $19 plus shipping. Just the PDF is $10. If that's all you want to buy, it's good to have. And if you want the physical and PDF, it's $20.79. But this can be plugged into other cities and towns if you're trying to build, or you can just flip through here for ideas. This is pretty good. I found myself opening this up a lot. DM screen, I bought the DM screen specific to Waterdeep for DragonHeist. Waterdeep DragonHeist. It might just be Waterdeep. I don't know if it says DragonHeist on it. It doesn't. But it's specific to Waterdeep, and it specifically targets DragonHeist. I bought that. It's a Gale Force 9. It was $14.50. You can get that off Amazon. And then I bought the Roll20 Assets because we were running online. So, and that, I think that was around $40. So all in all, I spent an additional about a little over $100 on resources, mostly digital resources. But if you're running it in person, I believe those things would be just as useful if you're running it in person. Aside from the Roll20 Assets, obviously. Plus the main book, I think the cover is $60. I got it off Amazon, I think, for around $40. So $50 is the retail. I think I paid under $40. I may have gotten, Amazon has some huge sales. I may have gotten it for $28 or something like that. So around $140, $150 to play this. Now we played for a while. we got our money's worth out of it. I'm not complaining about that. So one of the other things that kind of tripped us up, and it's a great idea on paper, is the code legal, which are like the rules of the city. So it lists out crimes and punishments. The problem is there's a section in Hell of a Summer where you notice kind of a commotion going on inside of a noble's house. And if you were to enter the noble's house, you would, one, continue on with the written adventure, and two, be committing crimes. So by this point, two of the members are members of Forest Grey, I believe. At this point, they may not have been, but they were definitely worried about, you know, committing crimes in Waterdeep. So for them to sneak into the noble's house and continue on with the adventure, they were very hesitant to do so. And I don't blame them, because the code legal tells them to be. So that was a little bit of a hindrance for us. We got through it. I kind of winged it a bit, and it was like, this scene was pivotal because it's where you got the MacGuffin. It's where you first saw and got your hands on the MacGuffin. So I had the Nimblewright that was in the house take the MacGuffin and bolt, and they saw like the gold streak running across the yard, and they ended up following him or following it to where it was stashing the MacGuffin to pick it up later, the Stone of Galore. So we were able to continue that way, but there are some fantastical things that happen in that house that would have been nice to explore, but because the way the story was structured, and I could have done it better and not overemphasized it as much, and maybe they would have gone in. So some of that is me. I have to own some of that. But the code legal did make them hesitate often, to the point to where I kind of just, later on, I was like, okay, out of, above game here. Two of you are now members of Forest Grey, which will give you certain leeways. So you have certain credibility just because you're in Forest Grey. So you could probably get away with some of this stuff, if it's, warranted. And one of the characters was a harper. So I was like, you guys have connections. You could probably finagle your way out of this if you did get in trouble. So after that, they were kind of more open to committing some small crimes and stuff, and they weren't super worried about punching nobles in the face if they were warranted. And I could have expressed that or engaged that sooner, and maybe we could have stuck to the book a little bit closer then. I went way off book when I was going through this thing, but the most fun, I feel like the most fun we had was off book. Like, and some of it might just be because of the party. They were enjoying the role-playing encounters, and we had really good role-playing encounters. So there's no complaint there. But it just felt, and like I said, it goes back to me being able to pace the adventure when it's really a lot of talking and different kinds of skill checks than just fighting. But I found myself going out of my way to look for good scenarios to insert that were fighting related, just to keep some of the players engaged, which the book doesn't immediately lend to from the way I read through it. Players hated Volo. They from the time that they stuck them with Trollskull Manor, they hated Volo. At the end, when they say Volo was asking you for money, if the players found all the gold, people come out of the woodwork to ask him for money. And at the end, the players are like, yeah, screw Volo, he's not getting anything. So we'll see if that affects, if they make it back from the Spelljammer campaign, we'll see if that affects anything. They loved Mert. I made Mert this jolly guy who like misses the fight. So whenever he had the opportunity, he had this like huge smile on his face, and his eyes were wide, cocky, and he was comfortable with a sword in his hand and getting knocked around a bit. And I thought Mert was fun, and the players liked Mert. This adventure has 1,000 NPCs, and it's not enough to fill the city, and it's too much for me to wrap my mind around, and too many voices for me to attempt. So like I said, it simultaneously was a lot and not enough information. That's why it would have helped me anyway if they would have just narrowed it down to one storyline instead of having 4 different ones in there, and you kind of were like, yeah, these guys should still be doing something in the background, but I don't have the mental capacity to deal with it. But overall, I think all the players seem to like it. I will say that by the time they found the vault, I'm glad that I didn't have them, because the book says you find the vault, and then the vault sends you on a search quest for 3 items, and it's like a beardless dwarf and a love song, an elven love song, or a unicorn, and I'm not. Don't quote me on all those. I don't know if those are exactly the items in the book, but you roll on 3 random tables to find 3 random things for the players to go hunt down now. I tried to incorporate that early on because I thought it would be cheap for them to go to the vault and then get this and then have to go search for other things. So instead, I took the Stone of Galore is like a sentient thing, and it has 3 eyes. And I'm like, well, it has 3 eyes, and if you grab this thing and go to the vault, it's going to send you for 3 things. So instead, I just remove the eyes. And this isn't my idea; it's a suggestion. I don't know if the Alexandrian suggested it, or I listened to a lot of YouTubers. It might have been Sly Flourish or something like that. And when they got the Stone of Galore, it didn't have any eyes in it, but it gave you a hint as to where to find the first eye. And then when you got the first eye, you would insert it into the stone, and then it would give you a boon, which we rolled on a random table, and it would give you a hint to find the second eye. And I thought that was more fun than, here's the Stone of Galore, you go to the vault, it tells you, hey, you got to go find 3 things, and now you're being hunted while you try to find these 3 things, and being attacked randomly, and it's just a nuisance, and really just drags. That's what it would feel like to me. Kind of glad I did it this way, because when they did get to the vault, unprompted, one of the players just said, if we're told we got to go find more things to get into this vault, I'm gonna be so mad. So and it wouldn't have felt, and if we would have done it by the book, it wouldn't have felt as cheap. But if I would have done it right there, it definitely would have felt cheap. But that wasn't my intent anyway. My intent was just to substitute the 3 random pieces of nonsense to the 3 eyes that are on the Stone of Galore. So when they got the first eye, it gave them a boon, gave them a hint to the second eye. When they got the second eye, it gave them a bane and gave them a hint to the third eye. And when they got to the third eye, it gave them an epic boon. And they were all rolled at random. The bane ended up being a 5 foot slower movement. So the person who was attuned to the Stone of Galore had like a hypnotic spray they could cast once per day. And then they had 5 foot less movement. They were human. They weren't like a gnome or a halfling. I think halfling's the only race that takes 5 foot less movement now. And then they got some other kind of magical thing for their epic boon, and they were enjoying that. For the final battle, I thought the castle lanterns were Mr. Castle Lantern would have been a little too high a level to throw in there, I think. So as they're coming out of the vault, you know, they get the gold, they meet the golden dwarf, they do other things. And they're coming out of the vault, and they're supposed to run into a bunch of enemies that they've made. So as soon as the battle started, I rolled a d4, and that's when it may have been a d6. And that's when, that's how many rounds it would take for their backup to arrive, right? So a bunch of soldiers are here. I didn't put Volo Castle Lantern in there because I thought he would be too difficult. So I put the Growlhound guy in there. I think it's Orond Growlhound. But I gave him some magical boots. I gave him a ring of spell storing that Volo loaded up with 3 things. And I think I gave him, I don't remember if I gave him something else or not. Anyway, so he had this ring of spell storing. He could cast the earthquake spell, which was a great factor to drop in there to sway the battle. And I even gave him the once per day summon it, some kind of demon thing. I can't remember what the third one was, but so instead of throwing in Mr. Castellan, I threw in Mr. Grahund, and I thought it was an okay battle. I plumped him up a bit because, you know, that guy had like 11 hit points or something like that. So I beefed him up a bit. But with him came the Nimblewright. And earlier in the campaign, the Nimblewright was spared by one of the players. So I actually had the Nimblewright turn and help the players through this. And though it got destroyed in the process, the PCs wanted to, or the players wanted to bring it back. So they took it to the Temple of Inspired Hands, I think is what it's called. And they managed to bring it back. It had, I think it's got like a peg leg now. I had them roll 3 checks to see what kind of condition it would be in when they brought it back. And the Nimblewright's working at their bar now, so, which is up and running. So I think we all had fun. I just always felt overwhelmed when I was trying to read through. And if the players ever asked for something that I didn't have prepared, the city has so much history and it's so big, it's likely there. And I didn't want to do a bad job telling the story. So sometimes I would just be like, hey, we can definitely explore this. If you want to do that next time, then we can. Give me a chance to look into it. Now, after the players all got their money, they wanted to spend a lot of money. And you don't want to open up every magical item on the planet. So that was a fun thing to juggle. And we did an 8-month time jump for them to build up their bar, deal with all these people, a little bit of retribution from the the evildoers that they were encountering that lost because they weren't happy. And then what else? They had to deal with all the people, all the beggars coming and asking for money, which that'll have repercussions later. And then I got to tear apart, after the 8-month time jump, I got to tear apart Waterdeep with an invasion. So that was fun. When I first read the opening of Spelljammer, I was like, oh man, I'm going to run Waterdeep, DragonHeist, and then I'm going to decimate Waterdeep. It's going to be great. What I'm thinking about doing though is, after everything is said and done, talking to them and seeing if they want to, after Spelljammer, I have another idea for something I might like to run, continuing on with the same characters up to level 20, possibly, if that's what they want to do. But if not, I was thinking that if they wanted to go through Dungeon of the Mad Mage, it could have the same opening as Spelljammer. So you're just, except for you play from a different point of view. So their new characters could just be some characters hanging out in town at the Yawning Portal. And when the beginning of Spelljammer triggers, which is a bunch of like crystalline structures tearing up the city and like these crystalline monsters like wandering about and attacking people. These adventurers could just jump down into the well, into the Mad Mage storyline, and go through a mega dungeon. So I'll see if they're into that. If they're not, then we won't do it. But it'll be like, hey, there were 2 sets of adventures in the city. These jumped down in the well, and these went off into space to went off in the wild space. And it might be interesting to run those, and it would be like they would run parallel, kind of, just 2 different choices. So to conclude, D&D books, their adventures. I've run a couple of box sets now. I've run DragonHeist, and I've read through Spelljammer, and I'm about to run that, and I have alterations to that already. DMs are definitely going to alter them anyway, but it seems like with the few that I've run, you end up changing a lot. If that's par for the course, I guess that's just it. But you spend a decent amount of money on these things, so and Spelljammer, not trying to get too far off base because it's supposed to be DragonHeist wrap up, but Spelljammer errated content the day after it came out, and that's a little much. So you would think that the people writing these books would have a good thumb on their pulse for their fan base at this point, but maybe their fan base is just too sporadic and all over the place when it comes to what they want, and that's why everybody who reads it doesn't really feel like they've gotten all of it, because it seems like to be the general thought process when it comes to Wizards of the Coast D&D stuff. So I'm going to be branching out and trying things aside from D&D anyway, and even if D&D were perfect, I would be doing that because I'm looking for some variety. But I would run Dragon Heist again. I of course wouldn't run it the same way. There's things that I did that I would definitely change. And I'm glad my players seem to have fun anyway. And I had a lot of fun running it. But you can't just pick it up and run it, in my opinion. You got to change some stuff. I hope anybody found this informative. I kind of rambled on for 35 minutes. If you stuck around, thanks. And I will post a list of all the books that I listed are available through Drivethrurpg. So I'll drop that in the description. So if anybody wants to check those out, it'll be available. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.